today we're dealing with a problem tree. Now this tree, I'm gonna have to be honest, I don't actually know exactly what variety it is. And this is my grandmother's tree. It was put in by my grandfather. And it's been here about 12 years, and as you can see, it's got some issues. Aside from the most obvious, pretty significant fungus infection there. She has a pretty good lean on her too, so we're gonna have to try to correct that. Now I'm gonna deal with the fungal infection in another video on how to bring back a sick tree. But first things first, this thing has not been pruned in ages. This gives us a chance to talk about the basic principles of pruning that I like to follow. Now, these are just the methods that I use, so take them with a grain of salt and do it your own way. Now, principle number one, well, no crossovers. Branches should not be crossing over top of each other because they are blocking the photosynthesis of all the branches below them. And this one actually violates two principles. The fourth principle, we're going to skip ahead and do the fourth, is no 90s, meaning no 90 degrees up, no 90 degrees down. This one is taking a very significant turn all the way up, and it's crossing over, so violating rule 1 and 2. And that's a newer growth one, so we can afford to cut that one back. And we got another one of those doing that here. See if we can find an example of number 2. Number 2 is, well, the rule of 2. Typically when you get branches that will separate out at one of these terminal ends, they'll go in 2 ways or 3 ways. Now typically if we find one that's gone in 3 ways like this, not a prime example because that one died off, but this one in segmented into 2, it was doing 3, but the third one died. We don't want it to do 3 basically. Typically in this situation, you will pick the weakest of the 3 and prune that one off. Now this tree with its growth pattern, it tends to be pretty good. Not familiar with what variety it is, but we're gonna find that out once it fully buds and we can get a good look at the flowers and leaves. It's a flowering ornamental, so I'm gonna prune it back really hard without being too worried about any fruit loss. We'll take a loss of flowers this year just to make sure that the plant gets back to health. As you can see right here, this is a good example. You can direct the direction of the plant which way you want it to grow by how you prune. This was an incorrect prune. Pruned it right there, and that bud took over and started going vertical. And that brings us to principle number 3. No 180s. No 180s meaning, again, this one is doing it right here. Growing back towards the center of the tree, because the only thing that this terminal bud wants to do is go out away from its source of nutrition. So as it goes, it's going to keep going back towards the center of the tree and shade all of this out, because it will be full of foliage, and that's just wasted energy for the tree. So to review, we got rule number 1, no crossovers, which we have quite a lot of here. Rule number 2, no 180s. Rule number 2 is rule of 2s. So when you have 3, you prune it back to 2. Rule number 3 is no 180s, so nothing going back towards the trunk. Everything should be growing out naturally like the spokes of a wheel. And rule number 4, the tentative rule of no 90s. No 90s up, no 90s down. Now, a few exceptions for that. Certain apple and peach trees like to have some 90s going up, but they should not be in near the trunk. You can have some 90s growing up if they were, say, out here and then go 90 up. And I've seen plenty of apple trees that have a drooping down, but I wouldn't even call those 90s because it's not like a hard elbow there. It's just a gradual slope, and those are fine. But this is obviously growing in a way that's interfering with all the branches around it, so we're gonna get rid of that. Now the old adage is prune a tree open enough that you can throw a hat through it or a bird can fly through it, and I think folks don't tend to really understand or misinterpret what that means, because if you've ever seen a tiny chickadee or even a robin that's a little bit bigger, they can fly through one of these trees as is without much problem. So simply put, you want to clean it up quite a lot, and I'll give you a back pan shot of here of what it looks like. This is pre-cleaned up, and I will give it a hard pruning and we'll have a look at it once that's done. Okay guys, here's a good example of the rule of 2 right here. This one is ending in 3 branches, and we're going to take one of them off. Now, as I said before, you usually want to take off the weakest one, which would be, in this case, there's a 4th one there, this little guy. We could take it right here and encourage this to be the new leader. Now, because this one is growing straight up and out, I think we might actually consider taking this one off. Now see, how does that look? Not bad, not bad, but the problem is this one, still a weaker one of the, well, it's not the weakest of the three, but it's growing over, and it will continue growing over and interfere with this one. So we're gonna take that and we're gonna take it down far like this. Like that. At the neighbors. Good weather, might as well enjoy it while the rain is away. Now, to me, a lot of this is aesthetic, and that doesn't look right. And a lot of what we're trying to do is reduce this tree. We want to make it more compact so that we can later deal with the fungal infection. So we're going to take this back pretty radically to right here. Now you see right where I'm cutting here. Sorry about the shakiness there. Right where I'm cutting, just above the node. And you want to do a nice perpendicular cut, and if you see that, that's pretty clean. I keep my fissures relatively sharp. Now this will heal over, and this will become the new leader, and it will almost do a 90-degree angle here and grow out. But we can bend this up, and it will gradually take over. Now a lot of these principles, there's variation to them because a lot of them don't always apply. They're more of guidelines. Because a lot of this is what I learned from doing being a bonsai practitioner, and the principles do scale up and apply very well to large trees, or in this case, a medium-sized tree. All right, another guideline for you is I like to work from the center of the tree out. Now, if you can see these two branches, I did take one just off of this one, but you see how many gnarled vertical branches it has going up, and these are immature budding growths that are not going to be very efficient at photosynthesizing, because this plant is, if you're looking at John Kemp's version of the plant health pyramid, this plant is not doing very good. This one is on the lower tier, and it is baseline photosynthetic efficiency. So one of the things that helps is the way you prune it, as well as what we're going to prove with this in another video is the nutrition. And yes, plants need a lot of nutrition. So you can see what I've done here is a lot of these have been tipped. Now we're trying to tip them so that they stop growing out and start growing wide. Basically, auxin is produced. Auxin is one of the governing hormones in a plant that controls, among other things, vertical and extreme lateral growth. We tip those off, cytokinin takes over because it is a balancing ratio between them. And cytokinin is responsible for a lot of the vegetative leaf growth, flower growth, and root growth. So if we prune back, this is going to stimulate, there'll be some natural pruning of the roots, but new ramified fine root growth rather than big woody stuff. And the same will occur here. Now you can tell this one's a lot cleaner comparison to all the other ones around it. This is what we want it to look like. That is what we got yet to deal with. Guys, it's been a few minutes later and I've made some progress here. As you can tell, the before and after, that is a significant difference. Now I did leave a lot of buds on here because obviously the tree needs to leaf out and be able to feed itself. But a few things I've noticed. See, the damage here has got it leaning, and this is a pretty significant tree, and it flexes very easily, which tells me that that damage is pretty significant, so we will deal with that. The other issue I'm dealing with is that should be the central leader. If you take a step back and look at the angle, and you see it's angled up, but it should be, when it's vertical, that right there should be the central leader. But because that was damaged and continued to grow after that, the one below it became the central leader. Problem is that it is at an unusual angle, so we're going to try to groom that to get it to grow back. Now there's examples all over this tree of what happens when you prune in a certain way, and you can literally get the plant to make darn near right turns, if not complete right turns. So we are going to work a little further on that, but honestly, the storm's on the way, so we might not win this battle today.